What if Ace and Luffy got executed? What if both Ace and Luffy actually got executed at Marineford? Yeah, I know, that would have been the darkest timeline in One Piece, but hey, let's dive into this nightmare scenario and break down what would have gone down in the world of pirates, marines, and revolutionaries. Because, let's be real, this changes everything from the fate of the Straw Hats to the balance of power in the world. First off, the Straw Hats would have been done. No way they would have kept going without Luffy. He wasn't just their captain, he was the glue holding that whole crew together. Every single one of them had their own reasons for sailing, their own dreams, but Luffy was the one who made them believe in the impossible. Losing him, that would shatter them. Zoro might have been the most likely to try and keep things together, but let's be real, Zoro follows strength. If Luffy dies at the hands of the Marines in the most public way possible, that tells Zoro that their captain wasn't strong enough to survive in this world, that would eat him alive. Maybe he'd keep training, become a lone swordsman again, but the Straw Hats wouldn't function as they did before. Nami would probably return to her village trying to move on. Sanji, he might just drift away, maybe ending up back at Barity or setting out on his own. Usopp? No way he'd keep going. He was barely holding it together with Luffy alive. He'd return to Syrup Village and stay there. The only one who might stay in the pirate game is Frankie, who might build ships for another crew, and Robin, who would probably end up hunted again by the world government. Brook and Chopper? They'd be lost. Chopper wouldn't have the courage to stay at sea without Luffy's constant encouragement. And Brook? He might just disappear into the ocean, playing his music as a way to honor his fallen captain. Honestly, the only way they stay together is if someone like Jinbe, or maybe even Trafalgar Law steps in and takes leadership. But even then, it wouldn't be the Straw Hat Pirates anymore. It would be a different crew, a shadow of what it once was. Now, if you think the Straw Hats breaking apart is bad, wait till you hear about what would happen to their allies. Let's start with the biggest name, Monkey D. Dragon. If Luffy dies, Dragon will take action. No more waiting, no more playing the long game. This would be the moment that pushes him into full-scale war with the world government. His son, the one person who had the best shot at changing the world from within, is gone. He's not just going to sit back anymore. And Sabo? Oh man, Sabo would lose it. The dude already went berserk when he found out about Ace's death. If Luffy dies too, he's going straight for the heads of the Celestial Dragons. There's no way he doesn't try to burn the entire system down. The Revolutionary Army would shift into high gear, hitting the world government harder than ever before. The Straw Hat Grand Fleet? That's a mess in itself. Without Luffy, they have no leader to rally behind. Some might try to carry on in his name, but let's be honest, they don't have that same crazy charisma that made Luffy special. Most of them would probably go their own ways, and those who try to stay in the pirate game, they'd either get crushed or swallowed up by bigger factions. Then there are the kingdoms that Luffy saved, Alabasta, Dressrosa, even Fishman Island. Without Luffy to back them up, these places would be vulnerable again. The world government, or worse, another Yonko, could swoop in and take control. Luffy had a habit of toppling dictators and giving people hope, but with him gone, that hope disappears real fast. And now we get to the real chaos, the pirate world. With Luffy and Ace both dead, Whitebeard's war at Marineford would have been a complete disaster. Maybe Whitebeard still dies, but instead of the new era being shaped by people like Luffy and the next generation, it would be a scramble for power. The Yonko would be watching closely, Blackbeard especially. He already used Marineford as a stepping stone to power, but without Luffy running around causing problems, he'd have an even easier time rising to the top. Kaido and Big Mom wouldn't have anyone to challenge them from the next generation, meaning they could run unchecked for longer. And Shanks? Well, he'd be pissed. New pirate factions would start popping up, trying to take advantage of the chaos, but none of them would have that same spark that Luffy had. He wasn't just strong, he was different. He changed people, and without him, the world of pirates would become just another battlefield for power-hungry warlords. Now let's talk about the real winners in all this, the world government. If they manage to execute both Ace and Luffy, they just sent the strongest message possible. Resistance is futile. Pirates, revolutionaries, anyone who thinks about challenging them, they'd think twice. The Marines would get a massive morale boost. Sengoku, Akainu, and the higher-ups would use this as proof that the world government is invincible. They'd probably tighten their grip on the world, hunting down any remaining pirate crews that dared to challenge them. And what about policies? You can bet they'd put even harsher measures in place to prevent future threats. Maybe they start cracking down on anyone with the will of D, making sure no new contenders rise up. They might even pass extreme laws to make sure another Luffy never happens again. Speaking of the Will of D, what happens to it now? Luffy and Ace were both major symbols of it, and with them gone, the world government would think they finally snuffed it out. But here's the thing about fate. You can't kill an idea. Someone, somewhere, would rise to take up the mantle. Maybe it's Sabo, maybe it's another unknown pirate who carries that same reckless spirit. But one thing's for sure, the world wouldn't be the same. It would be darker, more oppressive. The idea that anyone could challenge the world's strongest forces would feel impossible. And that, more than anything else, would be the biggest loss of all. Zoro has always been about one thing, becoming the world's greatest swordsman. But here's the thing, Luffy gave him a reason to believe he could actually do it. Remember, Zoro isn't just some lone wolf. He had already failed his best friend Quina before he met Luffy. Joining the Straw Hats wasn't just about his personal goal. It was about loyalty. He swore to Luffy that he would never lose again, that he would follow him until he reached the top. Now, if Luffy dies at Marineford, that oath shattered. Zoro would be lost. He trained so hard, pushed himself beyond his limits, all because he believed in their shared journey. Without Luffy, I think Zoro would go one of two ways. Either he abandons the idea of being the world's greatest swordsman altogether, realizing that strength means nothing if he couldn't even protect his captain, or he goes down an even darker path, one where he fights purely for the sake of getting stronger, but without that sense of camaraderie that made him the badass we all love. And honestly, without Luffy's constant dumb optimism keeping him grounded, Zoro might even go full-on rogue. He wouldn't join another crew, that's for sure, but he could become some wandering swordsman taking on dangerous duels and basically living like Mihawk, except with zero purpose. For the rest of the crew, it's even harder to see them moving forward in the same way. Nami's whole dream was built around finally being free, but if the man who helped her achieve that freedom is executed in front of the entire world, would she even want to go on? She might go back to Kokoyashi village and try to live a quiet life, but deep down, she'd never be the same. Usopp? Oh man, he's done. Usopp barely made it through Annie's lobby when he left the crew for 5 minutes. Losing Luffy in such a brutal way, he'd never recover. His dream of becoming a great warrior of the sea dies with his captain. I could see him going home to Syrup Village and telling stories about Luffy, pretending everything's fine, but never actually stepping foot on a ship again. Sanji would probably return to Barity, cooking in silence, pretending he doesn't care, but deep down, it would haunt him every day. Chopper would go back to Drum Island, heartbroken, maybe dedicating his life to becoming a doctor who never fails to save someone again. Robin, the one person who understands how cruel the world can be, would probably accept Luffy's death in a more detached way, but she'd never let herself trust another crew again. Brook, he already knows what it's like to lose his entire crew. Losing Luffy would just bring all that pain back. Maybe he keeps playing music, maybe he doesn't, but that joyful skeleton act gone. Frankie, the one guy who might have a bit of fire left in him, would probably build a ship so big and powerful it could destroy the Navy, but with no one left to sail it. Basically, without Luffy, they all fall apart. Now let's talk about Sabo, because if anyone's reaction would be pure rage, it's him. When he lost Ace, we saw how much it broke him. If he finds out that Luffy died the same way, he's not just grieving, he's out for blood. This would be the final push for the Revolutionary Army to go all in against the world government. Dragon, already someone who plays the long game, would have no choice but to strike hard. Sabo would probably become way more ruthless, abandoning whatever tactical restraint he once had. No more playing the part of the cool, strategic second-in-command. This is personal now. And let's not forget, Sabo has the Mera Mera no Mi now. He'd probably take Ace's old flames and burn the world government's flag himself. Would he survive in this more dangerous world? That's another story, but one thing's for sure, he'd never stop fighting. This wouldn't just be the darkest timeline, it would be a world where hope itself was executed. But what do you think? Would someone rise from the ashes, or would the sea never see someone like Luffy again? Let's discuss it below.